I'm Jamie Kudla, President of Tarrytech Computer Consultants. Thank you for joining me for my podcast, Better, Faster, Stronger, where we help New York Metro businesses move forward with tips on motivation, leadership, management, and innovation. Joining us this week is Bob DiTullio. Bob is the President of Cultec, Inc. in Brookfield, Connecticut. Thanks for joining us, Bob, and how you doing?
I'm doing great, Jamie. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, fantastic. Just to give a little background information, I know Bob for, believe it or not, it's more than a year. Bob and I are part of the same Vistage group. It's a Westchester and Connecticut-based Vistage group, and we meet monthly. And I've got to know, I've personally gotten to know Bob, it's his business, and I know he runs a very successful business in Connecticut. So it just made sense to have him join us on the podcast and share what he knows about business and tips and tricks on motivation, management, leadership, innovation, help everybody move forward. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you again, Jamie. Yeah, it's been great getting to know you over the last probably about a year and a half now. I think that we've been in the same Vistage member group and learned a lot from it.
I think the first Vistage meeting that I went to was one that you hosted. It was in Danbury.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yep.
You must have done a good job because I joined after that. That one was just a trial. So you must have done a good job. I was impressed.
Yeah, Bill pulled me in to make sure I solidified you as a member.
Yeah, there you go. Pulling the big guns. So anyways, a good place to start is, tell me a little bit about your business. Tell me what you do.
Sure. So I'm the president of Cultec Incorporated. And Cultec is a manufacturer of plastic drainage products, and they're used for septic and also for stormwater. The plastic chambers are used for two different applications, like I said. One of them being replacement of conventional septic fields, and the second being actually the predominantly used portion of our product is for underground stormwater collection.
Mm-hmm. And how big of an area do you guys service? Where does a typical client, exist for you guys?
So we started out as just a regional company here in Brookfield, Connecticut, and we've actually developed customers throughout the world. We're nationwide. We get up into Canada, Mexico. We've sold in Ireland, Italy, France, parts of also in Guam. Outside of the continental U.S., we're in Hawaii. So we've branched out quite a bit since we started up back in 1986.
And who are your clients? I mean, I personally know that I have Cultec systems at my house. We had a pool installed a couple years ago. And, before I ever knew you, I mean, you're a household name, certainly locally, you're like the Kleenex of stormwater drain systems. I mean, I thought Cultec was the product. I said, a Cultec, but apparently that's not it. So anyways, I know that, as a consumer and end user, you can buy that. But do you guys sell to construction companies? Do you sell to, larger entities, like a property management kind of company that would be doing renovations, or what does that look like?
Sure. Well, we're considered a manufacturer of our product, but what we do is we go out and we try to drive specification with design engineers. So we'll give them all the specifics they need to detail us in a plan for either septic or stormwater applications. So we focus on the engineering community, but then we also focus on the contractors and distribution through distributors. So basically, we want to pull all those three together and make sure that we're creating a need for the product through the design, fulfilling a need of the contractor to use our product in an application that hopefully he's going to see us on a plan for and need us, and then also through distribution, setting up distributors with our product so they can get the product out to the contractors.
And how much of the process do you guys manage, in-house? Meaning, do you have patents on your product? I mean, I'm sure you have design patents and that sort of thing, right? So you own the design, right, of the product?
Correct. So this is a family-run business, and actually the founder of the business is my father, Bob Sr. He created the product back in the mid to late 80s, and that's when he started developing patents for his products. Prior to that, he was in the industry, but with other products, precast business. So we made all these products out of precast concrete. But he developed, a lighter product made out of plastic, which would basically do the same function as the precast, but much lighter, easier to transport, and just helped out to evolve the industry from old conventional ways to new styles.
So on your team, you have everything from, do you have engineers? Do you have CAD people and drafters? And then you also obviously have people that work the floor, right? I mean, you receive the raw materials. Talk about that a little bit, the design process and what that looks like, and then, through the manufacturing.
Sure. So our company's really evolved over the years. So I'd say that we incorporated, I think it was back in 1986, and it was just a small family-run business. And it was, basically my father had a dream of, creating a product for the construction industry. And, we started out very small. We also had a distributorship where we would sell other products that would go with the product that we were designing, that we were bringing to market. So we kind of started small, just mom, dad, my sisters, a driver, a yard guy, and over the years we've developed departments for our businesses. So now we have a tech department which creates the designs or helps and assists the engineers in designing systems. We've got a production and purchasing department. We've got a transportation logistics department. Obviously have a sales force and sales team headed by a director of sales. We've got a marketing department that's run by my sister Gina Carolyn. We've evolved to actually become a business where we were running a business, but we weren't really a business. We were, mom and pop just trying to make a living, and by doing that, something greater evolved. So it's interesting to see where we've come from and where we're going, and the growth that we've had over the years is pretty amazing.
So the format of the podcast is we talk about things that have made you bigger, things that have made you faster, things that have made you stronger. And I think that you've prepared some answers for that. But I want to ask a question, because you bring up the point that you were a business, right? Certainly by name, and you're creating and distributing products. But you said that there was some kind of inflection point there where you actually became a business. Can you talk about that a little bit? Was there an event, or did it happen over time, or was it just a change in mind shift, or what was the change in the degree of sophistication? What was the impetus there?
In my opinion, I think the change from where we were maybe just supplying product to where we became an actual business happened 15, 20 years ago, where we were kind of competitors with other distributors. We were distributing, other products that were needed for the industry, along with the product that we were producing. And we started to realize that the other distributors were starting to call us because they were seeing our product on designs, but they didn't want to buy from us because they saw us as competition.
Right.
So what happened was we kind of put our heads together and said, we're really going to have to make a decision on whether or not we go full force into being a manufacturer of a product and get out of being a distributor of our product, and gaining allies rather than building competition. So once we decided to do that, it was a real big risk for us, because we really needed the income from that distributorship that we were using to sell other products and bring in revenue. So we took a big chance to talk to the local distributors and tell them, listen, we won't sell to your customers we want to bring you on as our customer. If you'll take this leap of faith with us, we'll take it with you. So I think that was really the jumping off part, which was a little scary, but it really paid off. We gained a lot of trust from the local distributors because of what we did. And now we basically have every distributorship here in Connecticut because of that. Created a great trust.
And something like that too, I can't imagine that you can enter into manufacturing lightly because you have to tool up. So that's some significant upfront costs, and
Right.
you have to be prepared that, we're going to buy this equipment. Okay, we got to go out there, we got to sell this, we got to make this work. So it's not something that you can just kind of dabble in it. So when you make that shift, I can understand how that made a big difference in your
Right.
business. So
Yeah, there's a lot of steps to it. We decided we actually wanted to be a manufacturer and produce our own product at one point, but we found out that others who were already doing that kind of manufacturing could do it much better and at a better cost. So we actually subcontract all of our work out to other manufacturing facilities, which works out well. They know what they do it best. We supply them with the tools. We oversee, we work in great communication with them to make sure that everything's being run the way it should to our specifications. And they also give us input as to what they think would be best for us to try to improve upon our product and, our efficiencies.
great. So, based on what I know about your company, you are a family owned and operated company. You're multi-generational, and you touch a lot of parts of business, right? There's obviously sales, there's engineering, there's design, there's manufacturing, there's distribution. So I'm going to turn it over to you now and, start to ask you a couple of questions, in regards to, why don't we start with better? What have you done? Again, we want to give our listening audience some tips on motivation, leadership, management, and innovation. So, using that as our framework, what have you done that has made Cultec Incorporated better over the years?
Well, I think I touched on it a little bit, and part of that is creating departments, specific departments for our groups that work within Cultec here. And once we create departments, it's training those people to do their jobs the best that they can and give them the tools that they need. So, we can create all these departments, but if they're not knowing what they're supposed to be doing and they're not communicating well with the other departments, then we've got an issue. So not only creating the departments, but creating the workflow between the departments and knowing how that happens through SOPs, procedures that people will have to follow to make sure that they can be repeatable and consistent. That's something that I think is very important in a business. And doing that, we've also found out that we have some inefficiencies. So like one of the inefficiencies that we've decided to try to fix was our CRM. We had an outdated CRM. We've had a lot of complaints about it from the sales force. They just didn't like the way it was kind of bulky, not very effective, didn't get, very well detailed into the specifics that they like to see. So we upgraded, and now we're in the process of, filling all the dashboards with that CRM. There's always some new things that the sales people are looking for that they want implemented, but that helps them to give all the information that we need to and pass it along to the tech team so that they can do their job efficiently and then move it along back to the sales team, get the orders in, then it can go to the production and purchasing, order processing. So that was something that we found helped us to get to the next level. Listening to the people within the departments is what would help them to make their jobs easier and more efficient.
Having gone through that myself, what a difference that can make to organize your company into teams or pods or whatever you call them. And something else that you mentioned is that you have standard procedures around those as well, because we did a couple different things in Tarrytech. We had, first of all, when we first started, everybody did everything, right? And that's a nice way of saying that nobody does anything. And it's not because they're bad people, and it's not because they don't want to do their job. they're just not set up for success. They don't know where to focus their time, right? So, you know, am I working on sales today? Am I working on support today? And you can't do that. Also, when you have people set up into teams, just calling them a team doesn't make them a team. And you mentioned that you have SOPs and you have procedures in place. So again, in my experience, what that does is it sets your team up for success. So you can understand where maybe one department ends and another one starts. What are the touch points to the other parts of the business, so that you know that you have to deliver up to that point. And then by actually defining those procedures, defining those processes, you again raise the point where you can identify inefficiencies. And of course, there's always going to be inefficiencies and things that you need to fix. But if you don't have teams, if you don't have edges on what people need to do, if you don't have procedures, you can't just make it better. You know, it's like trying to boil the ocean. You can't do it. You can. So now if you've done that and you've separated it into smaller parts like that, compartments, departments, teams, pods, whatever you call them, you've set them up for success. And then also, you mentioned that you're getting input from those teams. That's so important too. Can you talk about that? Was that a shift, something that happened in your company? So you set people up on teams. Do you give people autonomy over their teams? Do you have KPIs, key performance indicators? Do you have things that you go to them with and ask them to fix? Or does it come from the top down, or do you work on that together? Just talk about that a little bit.
Well, you know, I'd like to say that we have the most efficient business in the world here, but we don't. We're continuously trying to improve our performance. Let's put it that way. So by creating the departments, I think that's a step in the right direction. Now it's really listening to each person who might head that department and getting their feedback as to what would help them to work better. So, you know, I mentioned SOPs, something that we're continuously, you know, working on. You know, just maybe a couple of weeks ago, we found out there was a flaw in one of the communications that happened between sales and tech. And it was something that was pretty serious, because it was a large profile project that we were working on, and quite possibly could have fell through the cracks, because we thought that we had it covered, but we found that we didn't, and we had to implement a new procedure in place for this specific challenge that we had. So I think, I guess what I would say is the most important thing moving forward with creating departments is also making sure that there's clear communication between departments and who speaks to who, and that almost over communication is the best way to go, because if there's lack of communication and we don't know where to improve upon, you know, we're going to have those problems. So you know, we took the advice of the people involved in the sales and the tech problematic issue, and we sat down with those heads, and we figured out what we need to do to improve upon the process, and knowing that we have the right people in the right places as well. So if they don't fit in a certain department, maybe there's a fit for them in another department, but we have to really work upon the skill set of those people, and hopefully they are the ones that fit those positions.
You also
don't know if I answered your question.
No, that definitely does. In regards to communication, do you guys have any preset meeting rhythms that you have? I mean, obviously, when problems crop up, you know, you need to communicate on a timely basis, and something that I say to my team too, just pick up a phone, right? I mean, I think it gets to a point too where, you know, Slack or whatever instant messaging product you use, or email or text or waiting, that starts to fall apart, especially if it's a more critical issue. Just pick up a phone. So I'm not talking about that in the timely communication, but, you know, just communication across your teams. Do you have a meeting rhythm that you do, you know, from between the departments or the company as a whole? If you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure, we do, Jamie. Thank you for bringing it up, because it's actually one of the points that I wanted to talk upon. I think it's extremely important to have, you know, communication through all different platforms, but the face-to-face, the phone call, you know, the voice over the phone, I think are key, and we should never lose that. I think that's the problem that we see with miscommunication, is what's the form and how is it how's it received? You know, a text message or an email can be perceived as, oh, this guy's mad at me, or, you know, he's really short, you know, but that face-to-face is what really helps people to understand, reading the body language and, you know, the eye contact as to what is the point that we're trying to get across. So yes, we do have a monthly meeting for, you know, company-wide, and that's a time where we sit down for a couple hours with everybody within the company, and we discuss, you know, internal issues, external issues. We kind of roundtable some things for a bit. Most of the time, I'll try to put an agenda together and a topic of discussion for that specific meeting that we may have run across the month before, or we know that something's coming up, so we'll talk about it. But not only do we have that one company meeting, but the departments have their own meetings as well, and they hold that with their team. And so,
and how often does that happen? How often do the departments meet?
So the departments, like the tech department, will have a weekly meeting where they sit down together. You know, now it's virtually, but they'll sit down for, you know, an hour or two, whatever's necessary to complete, you know, their agenda. Our sales team will sit down. I believe they sit down together as a group once a week. If not, you know, once a week, it's twice a month. But they also have their individual calls with their, you know, their sales director, which is once a week. So there's a group, and then there's also the individuals.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that information. So moving on, let's talk about something that you've done that has made your company faster.
Faster, I think I mentioned the continuous improvement process. We've implemented that with our manufacturing facilities as well. So we have a quality department which reaches out to our manufacturing facilities, and they get on a call, you know, once a month at a minimum to discuss what needs to be worked on. If there's an issue with a product, maybe we find that there's been a mistrim on a product, or that some of the product has come in damaged, or even just a call to say, hey, the product looks great. They have that discussion, and it's also to discuss, are there other product materials out there that we can implement into our current product that might help us to be able to run our product quicker, cycle times, maybe make it a lighter weight, but still not, you know, still be as strong as it was before. So, you know, we implement that CIP program with our quality department and our manufacturing facilities.
Hey, Bob, the CIP, the continuous improvement process, is that something that is in your industry, or is this something that you designed in your company?
You know, I don't think it's unique to our company in particular. I think it actually came from the manufacturing facilities that we are doing business with. So a lot of these companies are, I don't know if you're familiar with the term ISO certified, but they're held to a certain standard. And by being held to a certain standard, they need to keep certain documents and records for their customers, but not also for their customers, but for the certifying agencies that come in. So part of that is to have a CIP, which is, you know, what we just discussed. And that's ways for us to keep communication lines open and just be able to discuss our wants, our needs, you know, if there's things that we need to refine. But it's been great for us because we actually implemented a quality control department as well because of it. So I think it may be more of an industry, like a manufacturing industry program that's kind of.
Do you have like a CIP manager or somebody that owns that process internally, somebody that runs the CIP program that's an actual person or a title or part of somebody's job? Yeah,
we do. And her name is Michelle Zwick. She's been with us for quite a few years. She does a great job. She's an engineer, and she really holds them to a high standard and holds herself to a high standard because she's the one who's kind of putting her neck out there to make sure that we're getting the approvals that we need to be competitive in the market. We need ASTM approvals, we need CSA approvals, and to go through these processes are, very lengthy, and there's a lot of meetings that she has to attend to make sure that she's fulfilling all the requirements when submitting those applications to get approved for those requirements.
What was your name? Did you say your name was Michelle?
Michelle, correct.
So
Last
day
name is Away.
one that you decide that you need this continuous improvement process, you say, Michelle, you're the CIP manager, go. Did she go through training? Did she, get the certification on this? What does that look like? How does one learn that process? Or is it simply, you're adapting the processes that are already in place with some of the manufacturers, the distributors, the other companies that you're working with? What does that look like?
So what she did was actually work closely with our manufacturers, and with the information that they had already had, she was able to implement that into how she would like to set up her own department. So she didn't really go for any necessary training for that, but it was in conjunction with the facilities that we were already doing business with, kind of learning from them, also learning from her background and schooling to put this together, and being a quality manager. She already had some of that background. So I think she transitioned quite well. She knew the product because she was also doing design work prior to becoming that quality manager. So it was an easy transition for her.
In your company, obviously you have to deal with, there's a lot of moving parts in terms of ordering the raw product, coordinating delivery, talking to the engineers, talking to the construction companies. There's a lot of moving parts.
Oh, sure.
And obviously, the faster that you can do that, the more efficiently that you can deliver your product, the faster that you could do that, the better, right? I mean, if everything always lined up, and it went smoothly, fantastic. What kind of changes did you have to make during COVID? Were you affected? Did it affect your supply chain? Did it affect, timeframes on the job and the delivery of your product? And did you make any changes to adapt to this COVID landscape?
Yeah, so we certainly had to adjust because we found that we had to shut down the operations here at the business here in Brookfield, Connecticut. And luckily enough, my sister Gina Carolyn has done a great job with having everything set up for people so that they can, not miss a beat and take all their equipment home and be able to work remotely. And quite honestly, I don't know how she did it. It was so seamless. It's like we didn't miss a beat. So she did a great job. And everybody else did too. Everybody reacted well. And I think that they saw the seriousness of, what we were presented with, and they reacted really well. But it was difficult, mostly I think for the sales team, because everything was a face-to-face meeting or stopping in and meeting with a contractor or an engineer.
Prior to COVID, it was face-to-face. Yep.
Correct. So that really affected them and how they were able to effectively do their job. So it took some time for them to really adapt to the new, way of doing things, and learning that, okay, well, it's not just our company, it's everybody, worldwide has to do this. So it's, I don't think that there was a real disadvantage. Like, everybody was at that disadvantage. We just all had to kind of decide, how do we make the transition now to doing virtual calls and getting in the face of people. And thankfully we've got products like Zoom, GoToMeeting. People are looking at doing more webinars so that we can stay connected. Social media has helped, as well. So that was kind of a challenge for us. We were trending towards social media platforms. We weren't as fully embracing them as we should have, but we were kind of forced into it. So I think we stepped up our game in that regard. And as far as like the internal and external communication, we had to really work on that, because it's not as easy to walk from one office to the next now to get your answer.
You could do it, but you have to wear a mask.
Right. And there's also this
But a lot of people aren't there now either. I mean, they're working
Right,
remote.
right. And there's that mental barrier that they're not in the next office anymore. I actually have to pick up the phone and call them. And like you said, you have to get past that. You have to just pick up the phone and have the conversation. And
You know what's amazing
that
though?
was a
I
challenge.
mean, a lot of these tools were in place and they've been around for a while, and not everyone fully embraced them and not everyone really even knew how to use them. And a lot of people have had to change their processes and use these tools. For Tarrytech, we have some people that work remotely, and it's been that way for years. And we meet weekly, and so we use GoToMeeting, and we have obviously the cameras and the audio that goes with it and that sort of thing. And it's pretty amazing. At first, and I don't even remember when we first started doing, but at first it was probably awkward and a little bit different. But then I think the visual component changes everything, and it really tricks the mind. It really does. Even like with my kids at school over the semester, it's amazing the difference in having a FaceTime conversation as opposed to having just an audio conversation. It really changes it. And I think, and I was having a conversation with somebody. This was one of the Vistage presenters a few months ago, and it was on the sales process and doing video conferencing and that sort of thing. And I said to him, I go, it's a little bit awkward, doing these first time appointments, because similar for me too, I would do a lot of my appointments, or 95% of my appointments. The first one was face to face.
Sure.
So to have to adapt to that and do it over the video was a little bit awkward. And I said to him, I said, oh, it's a little bit awkward. We're doing this first time appointments over a Zoom call or GoToMeeting or whatever it was. And he said something to me that was it was a small mind shift, and it's made all the difference in the world. He goes, it's only awkward if you think about it that way. He goes, if you don't want it to be awkward in your mind, your mindset is that it's not going to be, guess what? It won't. And he's right. It was just that small change in the way that I thought about it that really made all the difference. And it's just kind of, I don't like the expression, the new norm, but it's the new norm.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that. Being in sales, I've done sales. I'm in sales basically every day. You're selling yourself, you're selling your product. If I were to say that when I walked into an office to meet someone for the first time, I didn't feel awkward, I'd be lying. So how much more awkward, is it? You've got a video monitor, but it's still awkward. I get it.
Yeah,
It's just it's your mindset as to, right, do you want to make it awkward, or do you want to embrace it and use it to your advantage? So I think that a lot of people would probably agree that you have to just challenge yourself and get past some of those things that you might think are uncomfortable, but they end up working out, for you, the best way they can. Our sales team.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say our sales team, definitely presented that challenge to us and said, well, geez, we don't feel comfortable doing that. I'd rather just pick up the call. And prior to actually COVID hitting, we were doing a lot of our calls to our salespeople just by phone, because they were in other states, and it was easy. And I actually started talking to our sales director. I said, what, I'd like to start doing this by video conferencing. I'd like for them to see our face. I'd like to read their responses. So, just very briefly before COVID hit, we just started to do that. So it wasn't so difficult. And I think it helped us to transition a little bit easier when COVID hit.
The biggest issue that I'm dealing with right now, and I think I've gotten over the awkwardness, of doing everything over Zoom or GoToMeeting or whatever it is now. I think the biggest challenge that I have right now is the energy, right? Certainly if you're in a longer meeting, it's hard to maintain that level of energy from a remote standpoint when you're doing it over video. So something that we've learned, and we do this in our Vistage meetings too, you need a few more breaks. I think certainly in the longer meetings, you take some breaks, you get up, you walk around, go get something to drink, something like that, and that definitely helps.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm a big proponent of getting up and moving around a little bit throughout those meetings. And it is difficult because there must be some sort of study too about getting some sort of screen time, like I don't know what you would call it, like being tired from a certain amount of time in front of a screen. But the one-on-one, you don't seem to get that
It's
when you're in a
less.
group of
Yeah,
people.
yeah. I think you're probably because you're more engaged. You know,
Right.
something else that helps too. Get yourself a good headset. This one's great. I can walk across the building with this thing. So it's great
That's
if you want to
cool.
get up and walk around a little bit. Clearly, I'm using a mic here and I don't have the headset on. But on some calls, you know, you can have the conference system call you so that I'm a little bit more mobile. So
Sure. Sure.
moving on to our last point here. Share some information about your company that you've done to make it stronger over the years, something that, you know, maybe gave you a competitive advantage. I know you talked about some training and some tools that you had, or I think you have a good perspective, you know, spanning many decades and, you know, being part of, you know, touching lots of parts of business. Share some tips and tricks that you've done to make yourself stronger over the years.
Um, you know, I think the training for employees, allowing them to get the training they need, and not only for the employees, but for the managers as well. You know, and myself, you know, I joined a group, the Vistage group, and I'm, you know, continuously learning from my peers. So I think that continually trying to educate yourself on your industry, train yourself to be as updated as possible as to what's happening out there with technology. Those are some of the things that we encourage, you know, throughout our group here. We send some people to take, you know, a couple day courses if they need to refine their skills on a certain software, or you know, now we've just implemented a new sales training group to come and assist our guys to help them during this time. You know, it's unique, so there's new ways of promoting our product through different platforms. So the training, the tools, making sure that everybody at the business has what they need to be able to do their job the best way they can.
Regarding training, is this a line item in your budget? Is this something that you set up during the year? Do you put it on the different departments to identify what they want to be trained on during the year? What does that look like?
So, you know, just recently we've kind of talked to each department and said, hey, could you provide us a budget of some of the things that you were going to need for the year? We saw that there was going to be need for tools, say equipment, electronics, this or that, but never did we get any response from our guys that additional training. So this was actually something that the management here at Cultec decided to do, and it was to reinvest into our employees so that they have what they need to move forward. It wasn't something that we budgeted for, but it was something that I thought was necessary, and to, you know, expend the money to make sure that we could, you know, actually benefit from it and hopefully, you know, profit from in the long run. But it's something that opened my eyes to see that we should definitely put it into budget for each department to make sure that they have what they need, you know, the training aspect of it.
Training, in my experience too, is something that doesn't necessarily need to be formal. It doesn't need to be classes. It can be somebody knows something about the business or a different part of the business, and you can cross train, right? So that you can learn some new skills, you can expose some new people. And I think that obviously mitigates some of the risk and exposure in your company too, so that you have some people that are trained on, you know, different aspects of the company, and it's not just one person that's responsible for some of that stuff. Also, this Vistage group and, you know, other peer groups, they're amazing because they're not formal training programs, but just the importance of a peer group, just so that you can help others process some of the issues, hear some of the issues that they're going through in something. And this has been a common theme in our last couple Vistage meetings, is management training. You know, so that was something that was brought up. So just having a peer group is so important. And
Right.
I think if you can, I'm part of a peer group in my industry that's been invaluable in regards to running an MSP. But then I purposely joined Vistage because I wanted something that was outside of my peer group, just to have some different influences from different industries and different areas, and it's been fantastic.
Yeah, I would agree with you. That was actually something that I wanted to bring up as well. I get a lot out of the group meetings because we've got representation of a bunch of different industries and different perceptions of how they see our product and how we see their product. So something that I might have, blinders on and just seeing in a narrow path, I've got now, say, 13 or 14 other people taking a look at it and bringing it to my attention. Did you ever look at it at this, from this angle? And that's quite helpful for me. There's always more ways, to do things than you think, because you become accustomed to doing it one way for so long.
So I think if we play our cards right, I mean, obviously, two successful business owners, we can take a snippet of this part of the podcast, and Bill can use it to, as a Vistage recruitment video.
Perfect. Yeah, I think we could be superstars.
That's right. So we're coming to the end of the podcast here, but I always like to ask one more question, before we part. If you could go back to Bob in the beginning of his career, and there's one piece of information, one bit of advice that you could share with yourself in the beginning of your career that you know now, what would that piece of information be?
I think the biggest piece of information is to get involved with a mentorship or a Vistage group program like we're in. That would be sooner than I did, because you can always learn from others. And, I guess for me, I always just tried to do the best I could with what I had and didn't really look outside for the other resources that were available to me. And I like to have the influence of others kind of directing me, in areas of their expertise that, I wouldn't have thought of being able to implement into my business. So listening to others and taking the suggestions that you think would help you, and leaving the others, on the table. But having someone who can help you and coach you through the process of making these bigger decisions that you might not be able to make with others is really valuable, to have that guidance from a chair like we have with Bill, and then obviously the other members of the group giving us their real life experiences. It's been valuable for me.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. And there's so much to be gained from a peer group and the mentorship and the ideas and helping others, helping you see your blind spots. But also, I think it gives, certainly for me, it gives me something to chase. I mean, if you are the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room. I love that expression. And in Vistage or whatever peer group you're in, you want to align yourself with people that are more advanced or have larger companies or more sophisticated, so that you can. And obviously, you want people that are not as sophisticated as you too, so that you can share your ideas too. But the point being that it takes you outside of your comfort zone a little bit. You can see how people run larger companies. You can see what's possible, and it gives you a little bit something to reach for. And then also in a peer group too, you want to be sharing that information too, to help pull other people along as well.
True. Yeah, one of the things that I took away from this group is the importance of the culture of your company is much more valuable than the profit that you make in the business, because the culture is going to drive the business. If you're just focusing in on the profit, you're not going to be as successful as a business. So that's just one of the little snippets I took from it, and it's really helped to change my organization.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining me on my podcast, Better, Faster, Stronger, and for sharing all of your tips and tricks on motivation, leadership, management, and innovation. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I really appreciate your time, and thanks for sharing all your great information.
Jamie, this was great. I appreciate it. Got me outside of my comfort zone, so again, feel like I'm growing. So thank you very much.
You look like you've done this 100 times. It was great.
Well, I was thinking, I've been listening to a lot of Joe Rogan podcasts. I was wondering if I should be smoking a cigar or not. Like,
Right.
is that?
I think for the next one, part 2, I think we'll do that.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Bob.
All right. Appreciate it, Jamie. Take care.